All right, cool. So, all right, so you moved to LA in 2018. You kicked off the journey of pursuing game development, game
Hmm.
production, right? When
Hmm.
did it become like Lunacy Studios? Like when did you officially like give it a name?
Yeah, good question. So yes, I get there 2018, and the idea was go get hired and learn because I had zero experience in game development. I didn't draw, I didn't program, nothing. And so I spent a good chunk of my time applying to jobs, and you were doing anything, just anything to do with a game studio. And then the issue there was I was overqualified for some of the jobs and underqualified for the rest of them. So I was kind of between the cracks. But at the same time, I also didn't know a single human that made games personally. And so I would go through my phone book. It was I had a system. So I'd spend like one chunk of my day would be applying to jobs. The other chunk would be going through my phone book, messaging people, asking if they know anybody that worked in games. Literally through my phone book of like anybody, no shame, just asking. Um, and I'll get on a call with whoever it was. And the first person I remember I spoke to was my mom's friend in college. Her brother is married to this lady who worked as a marketing person in a very small publisher that like publishes games. She's so far removed from like where I want to be, right? Like the games that they've worked on and published, I've never heard of. But I mean, it started with her, and then I would end every call with, "Is there anybody else you think I should speak to?" And that's something you've taught me actually. I've carried with me for the rest of my life, genuinely. And I would basically daisy chain as many people as I can. So that was another chunk of my day, just to learn. I was like a sponge, just learning of like every bit of the industry and how kind of peek behind the curtain, how it works. And then the rest of my time would be looking up YouTube videos, courses and stuff, how to use a game engine and how to work in them because I wanted to just build up my skills. And about a year and a half in, maybe two, so COVID kind of kicks in and everyone's at home.
Yeah.
And I'm still so I mean everything that I'm doing is still remote, right? So I'm doing all the things that I listed to you. And then one day my friend comes over and he goes, what are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm learning. I'm like, I'm going to learn how to, program and learn how to, how to design games." He goes, "You can hire someone tomorrow that's been doing this for 10 years. Are you going to waste 10 years of your life just getting up to that skill? You should start a company." And I'm like, "You're crazy. There's no way." And he says, "I'm not going to leave this house until you get a domain name." So I don't care what it's called. And so he literally, I went on GoDaddy and it wasn't Lunacy, it was some other name. And I'm like, I'm all upset. He doesn't understand games. I'm disgruntled. I'm like, I type in a name just to get him to leave my house. Next day he shows up. He's like, "I'm not leaving until," it's true stories. Like, "I'm not leaving until you at least get the ball rolling on hiring somebody or just like speak to someone." And he had me reach out to some hiring agency. Um, and he's sort of planted the seed, and this kept going on for about a week. And the more he kind of spoke to me about it, the more I went through the motions, the more I started to sort of idea and fantasize about like what it would be like. The more it started to make sense that yeah, obviously I have my own studio. There's no one telling the stories that I want to tell. Um, and as I'm like sort of writing down ideas of like what the studio could be, things just really organically like were falling into place. And I felt a lot of resistance when I was doing everything else of like applying to jobs and taking those interviews and stuff. But with this door started to kind of open a bit more easily. There was this super random thing that happened. It's you can read into it and say it was a sign. At the time, I did. In hindsight, maybe it was just a very bizarre coincidence. But there was someone, a very famous voice actor in games that I had like I was part of a Kickstarter where like you just contribute money to a project that they're working on, and I contributed a sum of money to a music project, like an album they were working on, and it was supposed to come with like CDs and a coffee table book and whatever, and it never came. And I actually forgot about it. This was honest to God, maybe 5 years prior, 6 years prior. It was like ages before
Wow.
I even thought about games before we even met you and I. Um, and the week I LLC the company, I get an email from like his people saying, "Hey, thank you so much for your support. So we're sorry that your items got delayed. Due to your like tier of support, if you would like to have like a one-on-one, either at dinner, With him, his name is Troy Baker. He's like either you do a dinner with him once like COVID ends, or you can do a Zoom call like at some point soon. And I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. The world might be ending.
Yeah,
Let's take the call,
yeah, yeah.
So I hop on a call and have a chat with this guy, and he tells me about this guy named Rami. I tell him my aspirations of wanting to start a studio and stuff. He goes, you should speak to this Rami guy. Rami is this indie developer who really likes helping studios and stuff. And so that kind of led me to meeting Rami, which from there kind of I J curved in my education. He's been a mentor, a friend. We speak every week now.
That's
He
awesome.
really helped sort of kickstart my career, really. And so that's kind of, and from there, I mean, I didn't look back because he believed in the vision. He's like, we need more stories like yours in games. And he really, I mean, we're like lockstep. He would hop into calls, help me set up meetings and how to run, brainstorms and all the rest of it, A to Z. So highly recommend having mentors. And I don't take that for granted one bit.
Oh
Yeah,
man. Okay. So so you've been able to connect with a lot of different people. You push yourself to make those connections. You ask whether they know other individuals in spaces. Sometimes they offer these individuals, and then every so often you sync up with someone that just really connects with the mission of what you're doing. Gaming tends to be a very complex space that can get commercial pretty quick, right? And there's probably a lot of pressure to
absolutely.
commercialize and think about ROI and all of these things, which then tugs against and pulls you away from authenticity, right?
Mhm.
But when you look at the House of Hikmah and the level of authenticity that one feels when you're discussing the game and the story behind it, how did you maintain your level of authenticity in a world that is like constantly saying do more, be more like this, be more like that, right? And
Yeah,
I don't know, I feel like that it kills the energy behind the, the the game. So what do you
absolutely.
do to maintain that sense of authenticity when you create?
It's a muscle. It's a skill like any other. So I wear both hats. I wear the creative director hat and the CEO hat, and they're like fundamentally opposed to one another. And so early on, I was very regimented about like, okay, today's going to be CEO day, and I have to just sort of think with that mindset. I'm looking at budget sheets all day and looking at basically the hard facts, the numbers, kind of what works and what doesn't. No, I mean, I completely sort of neglected the side of sort of the business case and, the sort of the MBA bit. I kind of let that go at the start, partly out of ignorance and sort of being sort of a romantic of like, build it and they will come. And, if it works for me, if I like it, I'm sure someone else will. And so there definitely was a bit of ignorance at the start, but as kind of the team grew, and, there was bills to pay. I take it very serious about that. And so that's where sort of the CEO, hat days came in. And then I hired a producer. Her name is Elizabeth. We're sort of mirrors of each other. We work so well together. I got very lucky there. But her job is to not be emotional. It's sort of like, okay, what can we afford? What can we not afford? When is the deadline set? And having somebody that you can sort of push up against in that sense is great. So, for example, and this took time for us to sort of find our rhythm, but I would want a particular feature in the game, or I want to do something that will sort of delay our milestone or something. And she'll push back and be like, no, we cannot, because X, Y, and Z. And so I'll make a case for that. And sometimes, she'll yield, and other times, many times, she won't. And so that really helped. But in order to get there, we had to sort of define what the vision was. And so early on, I put the pillars down of like, hey, authenticity over anything else. We're not making Aladdin. I don't want violence in the game. And we set up sort of certain sort of non-negotiables. And so that's kind of what that we could have leaned on. But then the execution of that and sort of like where, shortcuts have to be made in order to stay on time and on budget, having someone else to kind of carry that mantle is really, really helpful. But it was hard sort of switching between the two because Elizabeth would come to me and be like, listen, we need more money to hire our animator for another 4 weeks. And I have to go figure out how to make that happen. Or make the call of like, yeah, actually, you know what? Maybe we don't need that from a creative standpoint. Let's find a different solution. And so I can't say I've always sort of in the right side of that line. Um, but again, having somebody that you can sort of push up against and have them be that sort of the ones and zeros is really, really helpful.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, when you and I first met, I think you were getting your master's at was it Imperial
So
or
that's international
SOAS? That's
management
it. That's it.
for
That's it.
Middle East and North Africa.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's it. And was the focus like finance and economics or like something pretty technical?
Yeah, 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 oh yeah. There was a lot of that, which I hardly remember at this point, to be honest with you. But yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Okay. And back when we were going through it, like you felt like this is something I have to do and I should do versus I feel called in this direction, but like the gaming side was like pulling at you because you're a storyteller, you're a musician, you're a creative, right? You have a deep heart, and this like ability to connect with people at the mental, emotional, spiritual level, right?
Mhm.
But the pathway you were heading down didn't really offer the opportunity to do that as much. So for other people considering going just getting a degree, do you think just having that degree was essential and necessary, or supports in any way any of the elements that you find yourself engaging with on a day-to-day basis through your production work?
Honest answer, no. It wasn't. There was no sort of through line whatsoever. Um, I had to learn everything on the job, for the most part. I think so. For under, I mean, are you talking about specifically masters or also undergraduate
It could be, yeah, all of your collegiate education,
education?
right?
So in my undergrad, I did mechanical engineering, and I think for university, for undergrad, there's a lot of things that you learn around, not the actual content in the books, but everything around it is so valuable, right? Like how to be independent, how to organize your time, um, how to work with others, especially for engineering. We had a lot of team projects. And I think early on, I actually lean on that skill the most of like how to pick people for a team and how to sort of basically pick the whatever so specialties people have or what are they good at, and then how can you fill up their weaknesses and gaps with other people so you have a holistic, you cover all your bases as a team. That really came in handy. But for my master's, where it's supposed to be a bit more specialized, a bit more about the content, while the content was helpful and like it was interesting, for what I ended up doing, absolutely not. And I actually looking back, I don't think there's any other course I could have taken that would have done it. And this might be a little bit controversial to sort of the older folks, the parents and whatnot, but taking that money that I would have spent on my education and put that towards my actual job, the company, whatever it is, that would have benefited me a lot more. Or if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, take that money and use that money to help move you to a city that does have the career you're looking for, um, because a lot of it is situation. But this day, in today's day and age, you have, remote work and stuff. But I would say, if you're trying to, there's no replacement to learning on the job. And so if I would go back, I would start working ASAP, even if it's not your own thing. I would just enter the workforce in some way. Um, there's a lot more that you learn there than that's tangible and actionable. So I'm also HR, Elizabeth and I sort of tag team HR. And so we get a lot of job applications and stuff. I mean, we spent so much time together, you and I, working on resumes and getting down the word perfectly, getting every letter down perfectly. And now I don't even glance at where you worked, where you studied at all. Like I don't care if you have a degree or not. I care more about what you did previously, like where were you working before, and what your role was and what you actually did. So when we're on a call, I will be asking about what the actual, what were your day-to-day, task activities like at your previous job. And I'll actually ask about specific things. What I'm trying to basically suss out is if you speak to me in generalities, I can now I have like a sort of spidey sense of like you probably weren't that involved or it wasn't your, but maybe you're sort of there's a bit of smoke and mirrors in your resume. But if you can talk to me about specifics of what you did and what your experience and stuff like this, it's a huge green flag of like, okay, they know what they're doing because I want to mitigate risk as a small studio, as a small company. I want to bring somebody in that's done it before and can come with sort of knowledge. Um, happy for you to learn on the job. I actually encourage it, but you have to come with something. And so if you graduate college, you have no work experience, you'll cost me more than you'll help me. Um, at that point, I'd rather just have you as an internship and have you learn on the job, than pay you to train you. Um, on a sort of opinions and from a business owner. But
That makes
you know,
sense.
it's yeah. So work experience is huge. It's kind of more than the college degree, in my opinion. Now, it depends. There are some companies and some industries that it's a prerequisite, so fair enough. So your mileage may vary.
Yeah, what's interesting is there's a study done just off of like ZipRecruiter that showed that over 45% of job ads now have removed the university or like the degree qualification, right? And I think that's only going to keep going up, especially with the level of skill-based experience that employers are actively looking for. They do want people who can hit the ground running. You spoke to like entry-level talent, right? So individuals who are recently graduated, what do you think would set them apart to the point where you would say, like, yeah, you know what? I can see that you took the initiative to learn X, Y, and Z, or you're teaching yourself X, Y, and Z. Like, what do you think they need to do to show you that they have the capacity to upskill quickly? So that way you might consider, yeah, let's start with an internship, and if that goes well, then we could bring you on because you're learning at a pace that is not costing me more than the value you're bringing.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, great question. So there's sort of two paths here. One, Um, is so for example, okay, I'll give you a quick anecdote. We were looking for somebody in marketing, and we take like a dumbbell approach where you want somebody that has experience and sort of has been in industry for a while, but because such a young, sort of leaning department, that person doesn't know TikTok, and TikTok is huge and undeniable these days. And so you want the other end of this dumbbell to balance each other out, somebody that has that TikTok experience again, what I was talking about earlier of like filling gaps of weaknesses, right? And so we were having a hard time finding somebody. We were filtering by like years of experience and stuff like this. We use Notion to kind of take all our resumes. And we one day Elizabeth searched just TikTok as a keyword, and we looked at all those folks, and then we picked out the ones we wanted to speak to. We met with this one candidate who was fresh out of college, so zero experience, but she did a quick internship doing like TikTok content for a studio. But just by hearing her speak and looking at her personal account, her sharing like kind of what she worked on, she was very, very like switched on, right? Explained to us on that call, like even if the stuff you do see from my previous job, there was all these other things that I did on my personal channel just out of curiosity, or I would A/B test and see what worked and what didn't. And to me, that gave me an indicator of she's not just relying on kind of what the job gives her. She has an innate desire to sort of learn, figure out what's working, what isn't. And that to me is way more valuable than the raw work experience, right? And so we ended up hiring her. And while she was at work with us, same thing. She like doubled down on that. And even though I didn't point that out as a thing that it was going to be hired her, it was just innate in her. And we're betting on the person, right? And so somebody that doesn't have the work experience or just getting in, there's so much that you can do to learn. Pick up a skill that you know is needed. So TikTok is an easy one, right? So it's like there's a lot of companies now are sort of trying to find a way to tap into sort of the newer tech, whether some AI is a bit more complicated, some people are very staunchly against it, some are pro, but figure out in your industry and your dream companies, what are the things that you might have an edge on, or you can go get an education on, because people will be looking for that, would want to pay for that. And if you can show that you are, sort of growth minded, that is huge, especially for startups, especially for companies. And because it's not a box you tick. It's not something that you put. No one's going to believe you if you put on a resume, right? I'm growth oriented. It's like I'm always on time. Great, but like I want to hear it. If you actually live it, people can smell it in interviews. It's very obvious. Um, so
Yeah, and it's that authenticity that comes through behind the words, right? And
exactly,
yeah,
exactly,
that deep sense of confidence and delivering on what you say that you do, but telling a story and putting some action behind it.
absolutely.
Um, all right, so just one more thing, and then I want you to just share a little bit more about the game so people know where to find it and can get some
Sure.
more exposure to it. So if you could go back to, let's say your bachelor's years, right? Knowing what you know today, what
Mhm.
advice would you give yourself kind of either to enter the job market, to get to the space that you're in? Would you do anything differently? Do you feel everything needed to happen the way that it did for you to get here? Yeah, what would you do anything differently?
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about this recently. Um, because when you're starting out, you're basically useless. And kind of I felt it when I was starting out. I'm like, I wish I had more work experience. I wish I did more when I was in college just to get more on my resume. But I don't know if that would have made, that much of a difference. I think at the end of the day, it's like I was very insecure about sort of like years worked. That was kind of a big thing for me. I was like waiting for the clock to tick so I can just, have that tick over to 1 year, 2 years, etc. on my resume. And then what ended up happening is like life ended up happening around me, and I stopped stressing about that and just doing the work. And so even when I wasn't working at a company, I was improving my skill sets basically, right? I was taking courses. I was taking courses of game development and sort of how the engine works and stuff like this. Um, I was learning by speaking to other to folks that from the industry, and I didn't know a single human that made games, right? So I flew, to a conference in San Francisco and made friends there. But I'd also just cold call people, and ask them, or like my friends and stuff, and ask them for context that might, someone that might come from games or works in games. And so that is something that people can't take away from you. Um, B, you might so the side effect of that is you get to meet people. So like I have a very strong network now directly related because of that, right? And so if anything, I wish I did that sooner. Right? Because like once I did it as soon as I realized I wanted to be in games, but if I came to that realization when I was in college, I would have definitely started then. Right. And I would have looked around and see who at my university works on games and makes games. That's a huge hack as well of my brother, for example, a lot of the people he works with today, he met at his university, but he kind of followed what he studied and ended up working in that field. I did not. And so, yeah, I mean, there's the advice I'll give myself is start today. Um, Network, make friends, be curious. I think learning was, I'm obsessed with learning now. I mean, I thought I was obsessed before, but now in the last year-ish, when it sort of became time to lean, like, I mean, ship was fast approaching, shipping the game. I ended up, I used to, again, limiting beliefs. I would tell myself, I'm not technical. I don't know anything in the engine. I have to leave it to the experts. But there was not enough hands on deck. And so I just picked up a shovel, basically, as they say. And so I taught myself, and I'd sit with it, I would shadow my programmer, be like, give me an easy task that needs to get done. And I would learn. And now I'm in the engine every day. And so there's like new sort of high scores you hit with like education, kind of the desire to learn. And so now I've got to the point where, I want to actually keep learning. And maybe one day I'll be able to start instead of just like making edits, I'll start creating things from scratch to contribute to the engine. So education is huge. But like self-driven, right? It's not like go get an
Yeah,
education from
yeah, yeah,
college. It's
yeah.
like you have to, go. YouTube is your friend, right? You can go on if you're AI enabled and you want to, type in there. That's a huge hack as well. Like you go to Claude or whoever and you say, I want to learn about X, Y, and Z. Walk me through it. Give me a step-by-step guide. And then kind of doing that hand in hand is huge as well. So
Yeah. All I'm hearing is initiative and initiative early. Um, I know we're
yes.
we're a few minutes over our time here, and I know you're quite busy. I I could take this in like one slight direction that I think would provide comfort to a lot of individuals listening, and then move into the gaming, like the sharing a little bit more about the game. However, if
Sure.
you're tight on time, we can just kind of get into
No, let's do it. Let's do it. I have a few minutes to go. Yeah.
all right. So I remember back when we were working together, and you did make the decision to go to San Francisco, fly from London to San Francisco, not knowing anyone, right? At the time, there's a lot of anxiety underneath the surface, right? And
Mhm.
you're experiencing a lot in your life, emotionally, mentally, and yet you persevered and you were resilient through that, right? And every time you have to cold call, I'm sure these feelings come up, these inner voices that say, oh, you're not technical enough, why would they want to talk to you? So I
Yeah.
would love to hear how you manage and navigate the inner critic, how you found the motivation to just say F it. Like let's go and let's do this thing, because I think that's the biggest challenge for folks in this market is
Mm.
self-doubt, self-critique, deep levels of anxiety, mental health challenges where you feel incapable or like I have ADHD. There's no way I'm gonna be able to like navigate and manage all this based on like my diagnosis, right? So
Yeah.
how did you navigate all of this?
Yeah. Well, for the record, I do have severe ADHD, and that's a whole other conversation that I wrestle with. But sort of going, I mean, I actually kind of give you my super brief experience going to that conference for the first time. Um, a big part of it was my expectations were all wrong. I thought I'm going to go, I'll meet all the folks that make the games, and I'm going to get somewhere. And I think I came back disappointed because I didn't get major bites on any of my sort of endeavors there, in terms of people that I met and followed up with. They were all sort of dead ends, and no one wanted to sort of, talk to me or work with me really. My uh, so the narrative I had there was I'm trying to find my way into games. I came from steel trading and whatever. And people are flying in to meet with other folks that make games. And so immediately they would check out as soon as I'd start giving my spiel. And that was disheartening in many ways. And so I think I came back, anxiety ridden, of course, because mustering up the courage to speak to folks was a whole other thing. And I would see people leaving in the evenings to go to their like invite only parties and stuff. And so like the hotel lobby was sort of clear out and I wasn't part of them. And that stung really, right? And I'd come back with a stack of business cards and I remember reaching out to all of them and again, nothing, no bites. And a huge sort of aspect that helped was reframing expectation. I think I was so hungry for the goal that, yes, it hurt, but I just kept going of like, okay, my next goal is, okay, if I'm in LA, then surely I'll find someone there. So I moved there. And I think in hindsight now, it's like, well, A, set your expectations, but don't set them so low that you're not still hungry for the goal, right? I get emotional now. It's been 8 years. I go every year to this conference in San Francisco. Every time I get there, I'm emotional because I see where I was and where I am now. So those parties that everybody the lobby clears out at, I don't have time on my schedule anymore when I go to this conference because of all the things I'm setting up ahead of time. People wanting to meet with us, these private dinners and parties that where we host one, we get invited to a bunch. It's not to sort of to show off. It's just that like if you keep going long enough and you persevere long enough, eventually you're going to make friends. Eventually, you'll find like-minded folks and it's that's why I get emotional. It's like, oh, like I remember sitting at that, on that same couch, questioning why I even flew out here. Um, and so I think it just took longer than I expected. And same thing with the studio, by the way. I thought it was going to take half the time and half the money that it ended up taking. And so, but in a way, the ignorance kept me going. And so, yeah, I mean, it's the road wasn't very clear when I was going through it. But I just this sort of obsession with the goal, I think eventually worked out.
And that message is so important. Cool. Well, this has been really good. Just catching up and like getting into
Of course, man.
the inside elements of what happened to bring the House of Hikmah to fruition. Where can we find the game? Is there anything about the game that you want to make sure that you're able to talk about here so that people can sink their teeth into it before they go and start playing?
Sure, man. Yeah, I mean we're on Steam, PC only for right now. It's a very narrative driven puzzle adventure game about a young girl who basically has to grow from losing a parent, and it's a hopeful story there. We fully voiced it in English and in Arabic. So even if you don't understand Arabic, you can put that as VO just for your ear to sort of hear, and having the subtitles underneath. That was important to us. Yeah, it was definitely a labor of love between us and the team. So. Hope you enjoy it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Faris.
Of course, man. Good to see you. Good catching up.
No doubt. No doubt.